questions if we could. This interesting point was submitted to us by a person named Brad. It was emailed to us. Brad writes, I'm a voter in Greenville. I'm also a younger worker, age 27. I work a full-time job. I have a small business. So I work all the time. I pay a ton of money in payroll taxes for myself and my employees, which theoretically goes to fund Medicare and Social Security. I know both programs are on shaky financial ground, and I don't really want my parents and in-laws to have to move in with me. So I would like Medicare and Social Security to be there for them. I'm not a big partisan, but I've heard a lot of Republicans talk about Social Security and Medicare solvency without offering solutions on how to fix the programs. So, what specific solutions do the candidates have to make Social Security and Medicare solvent? And he adds this, tell Tom Crabtree to not let these guys off the hook with some BS campaign talking points. We need numbers and specific ideas. I think that's pretty plainly spoken, and Jim, you get the first chance at this.
No BS. Well, again, if there is one thing that I will be, and one thing that I am, is candid. The fact of the matter is we have to acknowledge we have a problem. Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare are unsustainable programs. Whether they were well-intentioned ideas, whether they were ever constitutional, notwithstanding, the fact of the matter is the demographics no longer support those programs. So we have to be honest with the American people and let them know these programs don't just need to be reformed. We need to go back to the root causes as to why they were established and figure out whether we need to have them, and then create a plan to grandfather those programs away. Social Security, to be specific. If a person is, say, over 55 and they don't have time to create a retirement program, they just don't have the longevity left, they can continue with the current Social Security program. We'll have to do some things in the federal budget to fund that. But let's say there's someone 35 to 55, and they're a risk taker, and they think that they can do better with a return on their investment than the less than 1% they get from Social Security. They would be able to take that money and invest it, acknowledging when they do so that when they turn 65 or 67 or whatever the retirement age turns out to be, that there is no federal retirement program called Social Security waiting for them. If you're under 35, you start now. We're going to be upfront with you. We apologize for the fact that you spent a few years paying into the system, but here's the money back. Invest wisely.
That's right.
I think I said a few minutes ago that what started as a safety net has turned into a trampoline or a hammock. If you go back and look at the history of those three entitlement programs and what they were designed to do, it was never intended for Social Security to augment millionaires' salaries. Having said that, we already suffer from such a diminution in public trust in government. You cannot tell people who have been paying into Social Security that we're not going to pay you out. What I would say, Tom, specifically, I'm 45. I'll start with my folks my age. Tell people who are 45 and under, we're sorry, but Social Security, Medicare, as you know it, will not exist when you turn 65 or when you hit retirement age. You're going to have a means test for folks who are wealthy but yet still want to draw Social Security or avail themselves to Medicare. This is politically unpopular. It might even be political suicide in a general election to tell those demographic groups that we're not going to have that program. But the reality is it is unsustainable. We cannot pay for it. There's a congressman by the name of Paul Ryan who 2 years ago, in 2008, came up with a roadmap to an American recovery. He reforms all three entitlements, Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. I would encourage you to go home and Google his free market solutions to solving those three entitlement programs. But the question that was asked by one of these young people about the budget doesn't even include the entitlement program. So no matter how bad you think we are all financially, we're worse when you put those three entitlement programs all in. If you're 45 and below, I'm sorry, we're going to have something else, and that goes for me too.
All right, David.
Back in many long years ago, when I was a chapter chairman for Young Americans for Freedom, at the campus of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, we had debates. And one of the debates was, what do you do with Social Security? It was a question even then. My advocacy was you allow an option to everybody to go either into a Social Security system or in free enterprise system. Of course, they would have opted, 95% of them would have gone free enterprise. Now you look back on it, and it's almost sage-like, well, that didn't come from me. That came from William Buckley, who founded Young Americans for Freedom. But we have to start that at some point in time. You have to start with options. Do you cut people out? Do you deprive them of the money they put into it? I think as a policy decision, we really have to think through that one. I have real reservations about anybody that's paid a dime in the Social Security program that you say to, I'm sorry, you're not going to get that money back. You got to get the money back. You have to get it back with interest, but we have to start turning this ship around. And the entitlement programs are not going to turn instantly and overnight, but they have to be maneuvered and begin to turn around. And you can do that with free market solutions. You cannot be unfair, and you cannot cheat people out of money they put into the program.
Christine.
Well, we've been cheating people a long time because we've known that this day was coming. We've known that it was unsustainable since at least the 60s. The demographics that we're facing are not new. That said, what do we do? The good news is that everywhere that the kind of reforms that the gentlemen are talking about have been tried, it's worked. In Chile, they started with age 45. And they said they took the idea from America, they took the idea from economists who said, you can privatize Social Security and it will work. And people under 45, they were out of the government system. And people over 45, they had the option of leaving the system. Quickly, most of them did. Most people looked at the advantages of being in a free enterprise system and said, that's for me. And there even are places in this country, in Texas, municipalities that have privatized their retirements. And yes, you know, the stock market goes up and down, but over the long term, it's much more up than the 1 or 2% that you might get in a government Social Security program. But my own contribution to this debate is, and this is very controversial, but people who don't have children have more opportunities to create their own nest eggs. And people who do have children are the real contributors to a Social Security system. Thank you.
All right. Candidates, we kind of have let you go past that 1 minute time limit. I saw right away a minute just wasn't going to be enough to let you say everything you wanted to say. So we have very quickly run out.